I'm just going to brag on you for 1 minute. Karen volunteers at the Stream, and she is absolutely amazing. She has given her heart to the least of these, and they have given her heart to her. And so does Sequoia, and they have changed our lives, right, Karen?
Oh, huge.
Karen gave her testimony at the Stream a month ago, and she was overwhelmed with tears from people and people to pray, because what you're going to hear today is pretty personal and pretty real, and what God has done in her life.
Yes.
You go, my love.
Oh, thank you. I get to hold the mic. That's scary. That's good, because you get to keep me on track. So for those of you that don't know me, just to give a little bit of background about my upbringing is I was raised in a Christian home. I have amazing, awesome parents. I didn't always feel that they were amazing and awesome, but now things have come full circle, and I've really realized that my parents really, I guess as much as earthly parents can, have really shown me just a glimpse of God's love, because it didn't matter what I did. They never stopped loving me. So I was raised in a Christian home. I went to Christian school, all of that. Went to church twice every Sunday, had to go. It was mandatory whether we wanted to or not. And so we did go, and on the outside, I'm sure a lot of people looking in would think, hey, that's a pretty cool upbringing and pretty good childhood and stuff. But I still did have things happen to me as a child, and a lot of those things happened, and they caused me to feel a lot of internal self-loathing, and I really felt like I was never good enough, that I could never live up to expectations, that I would never be worthy enough and earn my way into heaven. And I really felt like I was just no good. I was just, there's no reason for anybody to love me. So obviously when you have a really low self-esteem like that, you also become susceptible to people that take advantage of that. And throughout my teen years, my dad and I had such a trial and upset, rocky road relationship. We went basically a number of years without speaking to each other. And when we did speak to each other, because we had to, sit down at the same table every once in a while, it definitely, on my part, was not civilized. And I did not respect them or their rules or their boundaries, and I really basically stomped all over it. When I graduated high school, I did the one thing that I knew would basically peeve them off the most, and I moved in with my boyfriend, and I stopped going to church. I stopped associating with any Christians whatsoever, and I moved in with him, and I started to allow myself to be segregated from the people that loved me. And he was very manipulative. He was very controlling. He started to physically abuse me, not only mentally abuse me. And it eventually came to a point where I fully believed, in every ounce of my heart, body, and soul, I believed that I deserved every single punch I ever got. I stayed with him for 10 years. And after 10 years, he started talking about wanting to have a child. And my thought process was, it's okay that he beats me up, but, because I deserve it. I'm not good enough. But what if he hurt my child? And that fear was the driving force that gave me the courage that after one more beating, I finally had the courage to actually call up my parents and say, Mom, Dad, I'm at Mission Hospital. Can you come and get me? And my mom swears I took 10 years off of her life with that phone call. And they did. It didn't matter all the horrible things I had said and done in the past. It didn't matter the broken relationship. It didn't matter. My parents came there and they came and got me. They stood behind me when I went and pressed charges against him. They opened their doors. They allowed me to move into their home as a very broken 30-year-old person who, even though there was still love there, the one thing that I've really learned over life is the people we love the most are usually the ones we hurt the most. And I would lash out at my parents horribly, even though they had opened their door and they had taken me back in where I had nowhere else to go. And they still loved me. And one little example I wanted to share was my husband and I had separated just before Christmas, so Christmas was really rough. And then New Year's and Valentine's Day. Valentine's really kind of sucks. Anybody that's going through broken relationships know that all the commercializing of Valentine's Day, it's like a constant slam in your face that you don't have it, right? And so I was really struggling that first Valentine's Day, and I was lashing out at virtually everybody and anybody, and had completely segregated myself to the basement, and nobody wanted to talk to me because I didn't have anything kind to say in return. My dad came downstairs, and he presented me with a single red rose. And I looked at him, and my words to him were not kind in any way, shape, or form. They were something along the lines of, what the frick good is that? I hate roses. They suck. I'm alone. I'm angry. Like, what the frick? What the frick were you thinking? And my dad looked at me, and some of you may know my dad. He is probably one of the kindest hearted people you could ever meet. And he looked at me, and being a typical old Dutchman, also never talked about feelings either. I never saw my dad shed a tear ever, and he looked at me, and he had tears in his eyes, and he said, I know you're hurting. I know this is hard on you. And I want you to know that I love you, and I want to ask you to forgive me. And I looked at him, and it felt like I got hit by a cement truck. I looked at him and I said, Me? Me forgive you? For what? And he said, because I was his little girl, and he had not protected me. And I said, Dad, how could you protect me when you never knew what was going on? He never knew. I had completely segregated. My husband was very smart, and he never hit me any place that couldn't be hidden. I would be broken ribs and black and blue, but never hit me in the face. Really easy to hide a lot of the damages. So anyways, we started to rekindle our relationship. It still wasn't good. I was still a very broken person. I was still very angry at life and the world and everybody in general. But it was a stepping stone for us. My brother, who had also gone through his own trials in life and had walked away from God and the church, he actually introduced me to go back to church. And I started going to Mission Hills Church under Turkstra was the pastor there, if anybody knows him. And life started to turn around for me, and I started to get some pretty good opportunities in life. I got an opportunity to change my career. I got into construction, which was really cool. And things started to look up, and I ended up meeting my second husband, Sequoia's dad. And again, because I'm really kind of got a little bit of a stubborn streak, I don't know where that comes from, but I am also tend to admittedly be a slow learner, so I did the same thing again, and I stopped going to church. I thought I didn't need it. I thought things were going good. I could do it on my own. My second husband he believed in God, but he didn't have a relationship with God. And despite all that, God really blessed us. And from the ways in the eyes of the world, oh my goodness, we had it all. We had financial blessing. We had beautiful home. We had more cars than anyone, husband and wife deserved to have. Our neighbors would ask us if we were actually a Dodge dealership. We had motorcycles, quads, just to give an example, we were really, truly blessed. God just threw the blessings on us. And I never once, ever said thank you to God. I had a huge sense of entitlement that it was all my own hard work, all my own sacrifice, all my own working 24 days straight, 14 hours a day type of thing, and that I had earned it, and it was all me. We were blessed with a beautiful little girl. She's just my heart and soul, and I can honestly say if I didn't have her, I would not be here today. And I really thought that, wow, I got it. I got it all. I got life by the horns, man. I'm doing it. And just before just after Sequoia's first birthday, I started to suspect that things were not so good in my marriage. And over the next course of about 6 to 9 months, I did find out that he was having a long-term affair. It was not just one night, hey, I got drunk and I made a mistake. He was in a relationship with another woman. When I found that out, I begged him, I pleaded with him to end his affair and to save his marriage and his family, and he wouldn't. And so then what do? I start praying again, right? And I was praying to God and begging God, making, all sorts of promises, save my marriage, save my marriage. And after quite a few months, I finally realized that it's not happening, right? It's just not happening. And I remember coming to a point where I said goodbye to my little girl. I ended up being hospitalized because I was suicidal. I felt I had absolutely no purpose, no reason to be even breathing. I didn't want to be there. I felt I could never, ever be a good mom, and that there was just nothing. There was no fight. There was nothing left in me at all. God put angels in my path. And I can tell about so many angels that he put in my path that brought me back. And now I look at my daughter and I go, oh, how could I ever think that she would be better off without me? And I ended up having to leave. I left him. I moved back. We had moved into Alberta, and I moved back to British Columbia. And for me, that meant not only leaving behind my house, vehicles. I literally left with whatever I could fit in my truck at the time. But it meant leaving my career. I left my job. I owned my own company at the time. I left all that behind because it was all wrapped in with him and his company and everything. So I literally came back here, and I remember as I was driving back to BC, I finally started to say a prayer where I said, you know what, God, you know what I want. Now you got to show me what you want. And I didn't like it, but I kind of laid a challenge out there for him. A little bit more attitude again, of God, if you want me to come back to BC, to come back to Abbotsford where I had nothing, I had no job, no money, no nothing, if this is where you want me to be, then you got to show me that by providing me a safe place to live. If you don't provide me a safe place to live, I take that as you want me to go back to Alberta and you want me to salvage my marriage. Well, I was begging for option 2. I wanted to salvage my marriage. I didn't want to, be divorced again. And I had loved him, and it wasn't me that went out and found somebody else. I wanted my marriage back. So I finally conceded and prayed that way for the first time ever. And within 20 minutes, my sister phoned me, and she said, "You don't have to worry. You have a safe place to live. Just come home." Yeah, he's really good, but I was not impressed. I wasn't. I was mad. I was like, God, this is not fair. You know what I want. But it gave me at the same time a lot of encouragement that it wasn't my choice. God was telling me this is where he wanted me to be. About a month later, Sequoia's dad was begging me to take him back because the girl he had chosen had left him and so on and so forth. And I kind of, I'm still tempted, right? Like I was tempted to take him back, give him another chance. He's begging me to let him have another chance. And I think God knew that I would never be able to trust him ever again, because he had taken so long and spent so long in this other relationship, and there had been so many broken promises and lies. So anyways, but I did it again, and I said to God, you know what, God, I haven't been able to find a job. So if you want me to go back to Alberta, where I know I have a really, really, really good job waiting for me, if you want me to go back to Alberta and save my marriage and give it another chance, I'll go. You want me to stay here in BC? You got to give me a job. Well, I'm here. Probably within a week, I had an interview with a really good company, and I'm still with that really good company. So, again, God is great. He's amazing. He provides. I wasn't really happy because it wasn't what I wanted, but I had to actually, I had to accept it. I had to say, yeah, this is where you want me. And I guess what I'm trying to just in closing, what I just wanted to say to people is, if there's anybody out there who's struggling in relationships with your kids, or kids struggling in relationships with your parents and things like that, just remember that a lot of times the ones we love the most are the ones we lash out at the most, and that there is hope, that there is hope and joy and reconciliation. My parents and I have an amazing, amazing relationship. I brag that I taught this old Dutchman to say the words, "I love you." And now he'll actually pick up the phone and he'll actually phone me and say, and before it was always, there had to be a purpose for the phone call. But he actually, probably about a month ago, picked up the phone and phoned me. And I said, "Yeah, Dad, what do you want?" And he goes, "I just haven't talked to you in a while, and I just wanted to tell you I love you." And even if we have disagreements, I don't agree with you, but I love you. And we don't part ways without a hug and an I love you. And it's huge. And I think if that's how much my parents could show me that unconditional love, it's just a little glimpse of what God has for us. And and the other side for people that are struggling with situations in their lives, I tend to say now, he doesn't always give us what we want. And we might think that he's telling us no, but he has a better plan for us. He has a future for us that we can't even imagine. So there you go.
We're going to pray for you. Mike and I know her father, and we often will have a chat with him. And he is so very proud of his daughter. And he's a Dutchman, all right. But when we talk to him about Karen, he gets tears in his eyes. He loves her so much. So, Father, we just thank you that your hand has never left Karen. Father, that you promise that when we're with you, you work all things for your good, for our good and for your glory. So, Father, Karen stands here today and gives you all the glory. Thank you for who you made her to be. Thank you for that strong will. Thank you that she's a survivor and that she is a mighty woman of God. Continue to follow her on this journey. Walk beside her and before her and behind her. Bless her as a mother. Father, and may she continue to keep her eyes on you always. Amen. Yeah, okay. If you are a young woman or an older woman who has troubles with your self-esteem and feel like you've been battered and beaten and you just don't feel much worth, Karen's going to be up here afterwards if you just want her to pray for you. She knows what it's like, so she can pray with knowledge and with passion. Okay? So that'll be afterwards. Okay? Thank you, Karen. And now we have Pamela. Miss Pamela. Thank you.
No, it looks like I've heard a lot, but it's just because I had to put it in big.
Okay, I'm just going to say, Pam's going to end the service today. So if people are coming up for prayer, those of you that are feeling that you're good and you're okay, it's Celebration Sunday. So we would just ask that you would help set up the tables and chairs at the back there while people are getting ministered at the front. That would be fantastic. And yeah, anyways, here we go, Pam.
Okay, I know it looks like I got a lot up here, but whew, I need Kleenex before I start. Whew. So Alf asked me to share my testimony, not from my childhood, but from the last 2 years. So it's emotional for me, so hang in there. So I want to read to you the verse from James 1:2-8 from the Phillips translation. When all kinds of trials and temptations crowd into your lives, my brother, don't resent them as intruders, but welcome them as friends. Realize they come to test your faith and to produce in you the quality of endurance. But let the process go on until that endurance is fully developed. And you will find that you will become men of mature character with the right sort of independence. And if in that process any of you does not know how to meet any particular problem, he has only to ask God, who gives generously to all men without making them feel foolish or guilty. And he may be quite sure that the necessary wisdom will be given to him. But you must ask in sincere faith, without secret doubts, as to whether he really wants to help or not. The man who trusts God but has inward reservations is like a wave of the sea carried forward by the wind one moment and driven back the next. That sort of man cannot come to receive anything from God. And the life of a man of divided loyalty will reveal instability at every turn. Remember, if you believe in your core that God is good all the time, that even in this you will be able to say, not my will be done, but yours be done. That's right. I'm sure you're wondering what the heck I'm going to share. Alf felt like I should share on what it's like to go through like healing and waiting to be healed when nothing happens. So just quickly back up and start to tell you for those that are new. So about 2 years ago, I started feeling sick. And I felt like I just kept getting colds and sinus infections, and I'd ask for prayer, and I'd feel a little bit better. And then my teeth started aching, and the doctor said it was sinuses. And so then they'd send me to the dentist, and the dentist would say there's nothing wrong, and they'd send me back to the doctor. And with every visit, they'd put me on antibiotics. And I'd ask for more and more prayer, and sometimes right after I'd get prayer, I'd feel a little better, and then all of a sudden it would go downhill again. And then I started wrestling with the enemy because you hear his voice when you're sick all the time. That if you keep asking for prayer, that you're causing doubt in everybody who's praying for you. That if you were really a good Christian, if you're really strong, that, when you ask for prayer, you should get healing, and it just wasn't happening. So in the meantime, unbeknownst to me, I started getting resistant to every antibiotic they put me on. And then they started putting me on stronger and stronger painkillers. And that was making me feel very foggy, very nauseous, very sick to my stomach. I was getting like a brain fog, like very confused. And at home too with Alf, I had no energy. So in the midst of all of that, we went to Cuba, and I was living off of allergy medicines, sinus medicines, because that's what they told me it was, and painkillers, lots and lots of painkillers, and we were trying to figure out what painkillers we could take on the plane so I wouldn't get arrested as a drug dealer, because I had morphine, I had Oxycontin, I had Percocet, I had Tylenol 3s, and none of them were helping anything. So we tried to figure out what was the safest ones that possibly they wouldn't arrest me for. We got to Cuba, and I was forever saying to Alf, I'm going back to the room now. I've got to go and lie down for a little bit. By the time we got to the airport, I had my head in his lap, and I just kept saying to him, I just feel like my head's going to explode. There's something wrong, and I don't know what it is. And so he'd be praying for me in the airport, and again, he'd say, how do you feel? And of course, you do what every good Christian says, and I lied and said, oh, better, and he'd go, oh, that's good. You feel like sitting up? Sure, because I didn't want to, you always feel like you don't want to dampen somebody else's faith who's praying for you. You feel like you always need to encourage them by saying, yeah, I feel a little bit better. So that went on for a couple of more months, and then in May we went to a wedding in Orville, and by that time I was beginning to realize something's really wrong. I could feel something was going on in my body. I was so tired. I couldn't take very much time to talk to people. It was affecting me at church. People at the river were asking me to pray for them, and I was just my mind would be so foggy trying to pray for people. I'd be just crying out and saying, like, God, these people need prayer, and I can't think straight, and I don't know what to do. And we got to Orville, and everybody down there started walking up to me. Is there something wrong with you? What's the problem? Which just made me feel worse and made me feel like I had to fake a little harder. So by June, I started having multiple visits down to emergency, and they started giving me more painkillers, put me on more antibiotics, which caused even a higher resistance to the antibiotics. And the pain level was getting harder and harder for me to hide. And they would say to me, it's just a sinus infection. So at one point at emergency, they had me in a corner cubicle. And the other thing that I should tell you is, as a kid, I was raised in a doctor's home. And one thing I never wanted to do was to be those people that my dad would talk about that just call the doctor for everything. The hypochondriacs, the ones that just whatever. And I thought, I'll never be like that. So I wouldn't even tell Alf when I would take myself to the hospital. He would just get a text, or because he'd say, where are you? Like, I'm home, where are you? And I'd say, oh, I'm out. And if I was there for a long time, I'd say, oh, I'm in emergency. And he'd say, what for? Don't worry about it. I'll be home in a little while. I always felt like I had to take care of myself. So this one particular day when I was down there, the doctors were doing what they normally do, and they were handing me more painkillers, more antibiotics. And when they left the cubicle, I just began to bang my head up against the wall. And it was just to try to get my mind off the pain in my face. And I didn't realize how loud I was banging my head against the wall until one of the doctors came, and he said, what's happening? And I just said to him, the only thing that's making me take my mind off what's happening in my face is just feeling my forehead hitting that wall. So he gave me more painkillers. So sent to another specialist, and they finally say, oh, we think it's a tooth infection. So they gave me a root canal on a tooth that didn't need a root canal. And so I, again, was confused. Okay, I've had this root canal. I've told Alf we have to put out money to have a dentist. So now I'm feeling guilty that we've put out money on a root canal. So Alf says, how do you feel? Oh, great. Oh, I'm so glad. And I'm thinking, you know. The problem was a little month later, the pain was back again. And now the problem was everybody's still praying, and I'm embarrassed to tell them that I need to go back and get another procedure. So now I'm in at the specialist's office, and now the tooth, by that time it shows that it's so infected and it's up in my sinuses, and the sinuses are infected, and all this stuff is going on in my face, that when they started the root canal, the freezing only lasted partway through. And so they kept trying to give me more and more freezing, and it kept not taking. And so I was in the dentist chair praying. And I know some of you have been in pain like this, where you're just, in your head, you're just crying out to God, like, God, please, I can't take this. Like, this is excruciating. And the nurse is wiping the tears off my face, and the specialist is apologizing to me. I'm so sorry, this is so much infection that we can't get the freezing to stay, and we're already halfway through. We have to finish this without the freezing. Can you hang on? And I just kept saying, God, why are you deserting me? Everybody's prayed for me. This shouldn't be happening. I should be okay. So we got through the dentist's office, and it felt like a nightmare. And we got home, and at least by that time, the rest of my mouth was so frozen. But by the time they did the root canal, once that pain was ended, I mean, honestly, I didn't know if I looked like I'd had a stroke or I was drunk, but everything was drooping. And it took forever for the freezing to come out. But I said to Alf, I think they got it. But inside, I knew something was still wrong. And the enemy started kicking me and saying, you're a bad example, you're weak, you're a hypocrite. And so I began to hide that I was still feeling sick. And I was hiding it from Alf. I would wait till he left to go and visit people, and I would just crawl back to bed. And I would take my pills, I would take everything that I knew to take, and sometimes took more than I should, anything to try to knock the pain out. And then one day, I heard the Lord say, you need to go to the doctors right now. Alf had left, and I thought I just need a nap. And I had been asking Janice to pray for me, and then I even stopped asking her to let the prayer chain know, because I thought, they must be getting so sick of this. You know, when you're sick all the time and you're in pain all the time, the first thing the enemy does is he starts telling you, stop asking for prayer. They've already prayed for you 5 times, now you're asking for 6. This is ridiculous. So I stopped asking for prayer. So I was heading back to bed, and as I was walking towards the bedroom door, I honestly feel it was an audible voice, and I heard the Lord say, you need to call your doctor right now. And I thought, well, that's stupid. I'm going to bed. You can't get in to see my doctor right away. And I touched the door handle of the bedroom door, and I literally felt a hand on my hand to stop me from going into the bedroom. And I heard it say again, call the doctor right now. So I went back, called the doctor. Amazingly, they said, we just had a cancellation. Can you be here in 10 minutes? Got down there. And anyway, she right away, when I said to her, I feel like my face is going to explode. I can't take this anymore. I can't take any more pain meds. I can't take any more antibiotics. I was sick to my stomach from all the stuff they were giving me. And as soon as she touched my face, it was like the Lord gave her a word of knowledge. And she said to me, I'm phoning the hospital. We're going to have a specialist down there waiting for you. You have a bone infection in your jaw. And as soon as they said that, everything in me just relaxed, because I thought, okay, I'm not crazy. So I went to the hospital. I didn't tell Alf. I got to the hospital. I thought, I don't want to bore him with these details, because he's just been through this journey. I get down there, but I did phone him when they admitted me. I did phone him then, and I said to him, I think maybe you should come down to the hospital. And he said, why? And I said, you probably should come soon because they have me on morphine and they're going to admit me. And so I said, the doctors can tell you the rest, because by the time he got down there, I couldn't talk straight anyway. So here's the second part of the journey that I wanted you to say. So that was just the leads up to it. So when you're sick and you're praying, and we had lots of people at that point. Al finally put it out on the prayer chain. And it was really scary because we had so many specialists coming into the room. We had infectious disease specialists, we had bone specialists, we had specialists I didn't even know names for. And they were all coming in and talking to us, and Alf has got this look on his face like, what just happened? Like, I just left the house this morning and you were fine, and why are we suddenly here and all these people are telling me that this is really serious? And when they started to, the next day, talk to me about removing part of my jaw, the upper part of my jaw, and what that would do to my eye socket and what that would do to my face, like Alpha and I began to have this talk about, and then they started talking to us about the fact that the sinus infection was very close to my brain, and they were worried about it turning into possible meningitis. And I can remember talking to him and saying, I would rather die than have them do that to my face, because I don't want to scare my grandchildren. I don't want to scare people. So we had this big talk about how I know I'm going to heaven, and so he put it on the prayer chain some more. Please pray for Pam. Please pray for her not to be afraid. And so they put me on the highest, what they thought was the big gun of antibiotics. And they inserted, then 3 days later, they inserted a PICC line, and so I was in there, most of you know that, for quite a while. And then I came home, and again, I felt like I had to fake for everybody, that I was feeling better, when inside, I was still feeling like total crap. And by that time, all the antibiotics they have you on, and all the painkillers they have you on, are doing a number on your system. So nothing is working properly anymore. You're not sleeping properly. Everything is going wrong. And so within, I think it was me home with the PICC line in, and some of you remember that I came to church with my little portable IV pump, and I had to learn how to change my own IV bags, and Anna Marie had to come with me because I was too scared to do it myself. And again, I was saying, God, why are you not answering my prayers? And then you begin to have this thing where you go, even if my prayers suck, surely everybody else's are good. Just by number alone, this should be working, right? But again, it just stayed at home, felt sick, felt weak. I pushed myself to come to church when I shouldn't have, because I felt much like Karen, like you just feel like you can't give yourself permission to rest. And so it came to church probably when I shouldn't have disobeyed my husband. You're only ever going to hear that once, honey, so enjoy it now. And he would say to me, stay home and rest. I couldn't do it. He knew that I was feeling worse and worse again at home. 6 weeks into it, I finally said, I just said to him one night, I'm going to bed early, I just don't feel right. And again, didn't tell him. Then I knew something for the last 2 days had been building. Got to bed. I literally climbed out of bed at 5:45 in the morning, left him a little note. I'm heading to the hospital. I'll give you a call later. Don't worry. Got to the hospital, found out that the antibiotic they had me on in this PICC line for 24/7 had now destroyed my immune system. And now I had no immune system left. And so then I have to call him again. And my faith level was so low. And I phoned him again and said, they're admitting me again, because now I don't have an immune system, because what they gave me to help me has completely ripped my immune system apart. And in that moment when I was upstairs in my room again, I heard the Lord say, Pam, do you believe that I'm the God who heals? And I said, yes, Lord, I do believe that. And then he said, can you believe that while you wait for your healing? And I said, honestly, without thinking twice, yes, Lord, because I believe in you. If I have to wait, then I will wait. Well, the point of all of that was to tell you that has been a 2-year process now for Alf and I. When you don't have an immune system, you're susceptible to lots and lots of stuff. So because of that, I broke out with constant mouth sores and ulcers, and my gums would bleed, and I'm susceptible to things like cellulitis, and I got ear infections on our last holiday, and I asked the Lord again, why is this taking so long? Everybody is praying for me. Why is this taking so long? And then he reminded me Israel had to wait for their deliverance too. And Peter had his thorn in the flesh, and I can wrestle with mine. But I'm not a martyr. And he said to me, and don't be a victim. I'm a daughter who waits for what she knows is her inheritance. And that is, my God is good all the time, and he's my Father, and he heals. It's just like Karen said, but he doesn't always do it as fast as we want. And so for those of you that have been suffering with chronic stuff, I understand how frustrating it is. But you know what the Lord said to me, and Alf encouraged me, is that, man, every time there's a call for healing, man, I go for prayer. Or I will pray for everybody else, because I think, man, while I'm waiting for my healing and we're still waiting, I want to give away. I want to do for others when I'm waiting to be done for me. And so this is what I've learned just in closing. I've learned forgiveness. Because a lot of times over the past 2 years, I'd ask for help. I'd ask for help in some of the stuff that I was doing in the church. I would ask for people to take on jobs for me, and it would be, no, I'm too busy. I've got enough on my plate. And I would just sit in the living room and I'd just weep, because I'd think, God, I'm so tired. How can I tell them? I'm so tired without sounding like a martyr. So I learned to forgive, and Alf taught me to let it go. You know what? If nobody's going to help you, it's okay to drop it. And so I dropped a lot of things. I learned not to fake it and ask for prayer. I learned to take care of myself, meaning if I need a rest, now I take a rest. I learned that it's okay, I'm okay to be weak. I learned to ask for help. I've learned to be humble. And I had a comment hit me and hurt me quite a bit, because I had somebody say to me, ever since we've been at the river, you've been sick. You've been sick since, and another person said, you've been sick since I've known you at the river. And that dumb little comment, true, you know, what can you say, right? True. But it made me feel so judged. Like as a leader, I should be strong. As a leader, I'm always supposed to be healthy. I learned to be patient. I pushed myself when I should have rested. I learned to trust. I learned to look for the gentle touches of God and not always look for those big moments, that the gentle touches are so powerful and so precious. I've learned it's okay to be misunderstood. I've learned it's okay to have boundaries. I've learned that in the midst of waiting for God to heal me, that he loves me. But that doesn't mean all my circumstances go away while I'm waiting. I've learned to give thanks. I am still here, and I still have my jaw, and I have not had to have any operations on it. I'm learning to trust more as other issues are tied up in this, which there's a lot of health stuff that Alf and I have struggled with, and you get really tired of saying you're tired. You know, I've learned to trust my weakness to others and not fear being judged. I've learned to be open and honest and vulnerable. I've even been able to admit to some when I'm getting afraid that it's coming back. And I've learned that in the waiting, I'm still useful. And I can pray for others to have breakthroughs who are also in the waiting. I've learned not to evaluate my circumstances based on the information that my senses are sending me. I've learned and I'm learning to form an opinion of my life based on the goodness of God, not on what's happening to me. I mean, you kind of have to when you live with Alf, because that's kind of what you hear all the time. I've learned that in the hard times to remember how many times Jesus said to take courage. I've learned not to lose heart or get frustrated in the hard weeks. I've learned to ask God for wisdom in the waiting. I've learned to be honest with Him and let Him be honest with me. I've learned to maintain my integrity when I felt like Job. And like Job, I've learned my ability to trust God and praise Him and bless Him is not dependent on receiving things or receiving healing when I want it. I've learned that things come and go, but God's love for me never changes. It's always constant. And I've learned that when you're tested, you find out what's really in your heart. And so just in closing, I want to read you Hebrews 11:33 to 34, which is the verse that God gave me about in the waiting. So for those of you that are in the waiting, remember that this is what they did in Hebrews, that those that were waiting in their promise through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, gained what was promised. They shut the mouths of lions. They quenched the fury of the flames. They escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. And the Lord would say to me, that's what you get in the waiting. You get to shut the mouths of lions. You get to rout foreign armies. Like you're not just sitting around doing nothing. So I just felt, Alf said he felt like I was supposed to share that with you and to let you know if you're waiting, you're not just doing nothing. Even when you're praying, you are shutting the mouths of lions. You are quenching flames. You are doing things, even from your sick bed, you are praying for people. And you need to never stray from the fact that God loves us. Sometimes it's hard in the waiting, but it's in the waiting you find out what's really in your heart. And so I asked them if I could just end with this song. And I just felt like, for those of you that are in the waiting place right now, and I felt like there's a few of you, and whether it's a sickness that you're fighting in your body, or whether it's just some promise of deliverance or breakthrough, it's a song by Bethel that says, take courage. And I want you just to close your eyes, or you can sing along with it. The words are on the screen. But when that speaks to you, if you want to come up for prayer, then we're going to end with that. And those of you that want prayer, come up while that song is playing. And those of you that don't need prayer, you can start setting up tables. But we are going to, what? Yeah, and Karen will be up here too. So Karen, if you want to stand over here. And then also we've had a wonderful offer. The pastor from the Ukraine wants to pray for healing for people, which was interesting for me because that's what my thing is. So she's going to stand over here, Tamara, if you want to stand there. But if you guys can just let this song remind you, take courage. He is with us even when it's hard. Even when it's embarrassing and nobody else gets that today's another bad day. You know, God's still good, so take courage. Can you guys put that on? Yeah.